Welcome to this Anfield Wrap show. My name is Neil Atkinson, and I'll be hosting this show in a minute, almost certainly, if you're listening stroke watching this on YouTube. The Anfield Wrap free show is one of the shows that we do on a weekly basis through the Anfield Wrap. We've also got 11, 12, sometimes even 13 of them that we do as subscriber shows. It's only £5 a month. If you like this sort of thing and you feel as though you've got the time or the inclination to hear much more jokes, more fun, more tactical analysis, more looks into Liverpool's history, to the background and the culture of Liverpool Football Club, then please click to subscribe at theanfieldwrap.com. £5 a month, as I say, and there's no obligation beyond that first £5 if you just want to have a little listen. We get some great interviews sometimes as well. But before we go any further, before you even go through that process, have a listen to this here. This is us talking about the latest match. It's the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson, Adam Smith, Rob Gutmann, Paul Senior and Paul Hogan. Paul's making his debut on the Anfield Wrap, so we'll not mess about really. We'll get stuck straight in. We're going to talk about this show. Also coming up, we've got Peter Marshall. He's going to be joining us to talk about his documentary that's airing on Monday in the UK around the smears around Hillsborough. That's to come. But before then, we're talking about Liverpool 2, West Ham United 2. And Rob Gutmann, it's 5 points dropped from winning positions for Liverpool in 2 matches. And in both of those matches, you would have said that if Liverpool are in winning positions, they will go on and win the game. It isn't as though they're up against Manchester City.
No. I don't know where to start, really. I was going to say, or is it 1 point gained or 5 points dropped?
It's
no,
5 points dropped.
It's 5 points dropped. I know, and I'm joking. It's hard to fathom. It feels like we've gone back into some sort of a wormhole of 2013, I think, where we couldn't trust ourselves even at 5-0 up. I'm trying to get at peace with this quite quickly, because I've had the conversation in my head over the course of the last month, 2 months, that eventually life's not going to be as good as it is right now back then, if that makes sense. When we were, I thought this is the best football I've seen the Liverpool team play in a long time. The results are coming. We're as good as top of the league. We've got home games in hand. We've played all the hard teams. This is just too good to be true. And football law says that eventually you must have a blip. It's just about how. So this is that blip. It's just not how sustained it is. That is the question. It can now stop. I'm happy with the blip. I'm comfortable with it. But it is what it is.
I think, Paul Hogan, that both games they've got things in common. I think that this is why the blip is a bit more concerning than one freak result against Bournemouth, and let's imagine something a bit different. What they've got in common, and is in both games, Liverpool took the foot off the gas when they were ahead. There's question marks around the defending and the goalkeeper. In both games, Liverpool end up slinging crosses into the box. There are things in common across between Bournemouth and West Ham.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, I spent most of the game trying to be really positive and trying to keep that positivity up and arguing with everyone around me about how we can't just jump on this bandwagon about it's just the goalie's fault or whatever else. There's a bigger picture to it for me, and I'm not sure. Again, they started really well, but they just seem to lose the way all of a sudden in a game, and I don't know why. I don't know what's going on at the minute.
And then in the second half, when they are very much on top, Paul, you're just watching. They put 28 crosses in. You're watching and thinking, lads, they've got a lot of boys in the box there. They were quite comfortable heading it. Slinging 28 crosses into the box, and occasionally they were getting to a byline. It was more of a cutback than a cross and all that sort of stuff. But broadly speaking, you were just thinking, come on, just be more patient, lads.
Yeah, I just felt
that's why I was trying to be positive.
Yeah,
and then about 75 minutes it had gone. My positivity had gone.
I was really struggling. I was talking to the guy next to me. I'll call Dave. I've sat next to him for 10 years. I couldn't tell you his name, but
mate.
But he's constantly, he missed the negative. He's not seeing any positives in anything. And I spent the whole time arguing with him about how many positives there were in there. And again, I sort of came to that realisation myself. Even though I'm still arguing with him, I'm really struggling to find how we're breaking things down. I felt a little bit like Firmino. I always thought that was Firmino's position. And now the more I see him and the more I think he's sort of more at home in the centre, and we just didn't seem as fluid. I love Origi, but we just didn't seem as fluid.
We'll come on to Origi. I want to talk at length about Origi. Adam Smith, there is this commonality really. It's the fact that it's the consistency of these factors, and that's what I found sort of difficult to watch as the game wore on more and more. I mean, we'll come on to talk about the crosses. We'll come on to talk about the defending and the goalkeeping. The first thing for me is Liverpool go 1-0 up. It's the dream starts. They score after 5 minutes against a side that shipped 9 in the last 2. It's meant to be your ideal. It's meant to be this is exactly what you want. And then you're thinking, right, go on, boys. You can put this to bed by 20 minutes here. And then that intensity just completely disappeared.
Yeah, I just can't get my head around it really, and I think it's just problematic. And On the one hand, I kind of think, Liverpool being not arrogant, I don't know what the phrase is, but being complacent perhaps against lesser teams has been a problem that spanned years, managers, players, whatever. We just seem to do that, go a goal, get the goal. And on the cup, I was thinking, this is brilliant. We'll score 4 or 5 here, get back onto the winning ways, put Bournemouth behind us, fine. But the intensity just dropped off, and I was looking and thinking, are they tired? Are there too many miles in the legs already? I was looking at Milner, who was getting up and down very well, but he still looked a little bit leggy, and I thought, is the problems there? I can't get my head around what's going on. And the really strange thing is that there seems to be a real mental drop-off that's happened, and that's what's confusing me the most. Is I can understand a drop-off in creativity without Coutinho, but I was watching the Bournemouth match with a friend of mine, and I said the thing I've been most impressed with this season is Liverpool's, mental strength. We come up against whatever, you can't break down deep-lying teams, we batter them. We can't, if you don't score early against Sunderland, it might be a really difficult match, we still get the win. I was saying, I'm really impressed with that. And then the next minute, we just completely collapse. And that's not all Coutinho, isn't the only one who had the mental strength to be able to kind of have that fortitude. It's just a very, very strange thing, compounded, I think, by the fact that the injuries are combined with certain players like Firmino just not playing very well, dropping out of form.
There's Paul Senior, there's this... Let's talk about both. I'm going to use Bournemouth again. Liverpool go 2-0 up against Bournemouth. And if you'd have said to me at the minute Liverpool go 2-0 up against Bournemouth, they're going to go in half-time 4-0, I wouldn't have said, you're mad. I'd have said, that's broadly speaking in line with what I've seen so far. Liverpool go 1-0 up against West Ham, and I don't think it's complacency. I could be wrong, and it could be that Jurgen Klopp thinks I'm wrong. But the reason why I don't think it's complacency is that you don't show that sort of complacency 2 weeks on the bounce. If you've got a manager like Jurgen Klopp, he surely told you it was complacency week 1, and then you're aware of it and you're trying to deal with it week 2. I don't know if it's sort of West Ham just managed to impose themselves a little bit tactically, but it just seemed to me like do you know what I think we miss? I think that it felt like the exuberance had gone. Like you saw them against Watford, and you got the impression they'd just been happy to play and attack all day. You saw them first half against
swagger.
Hull. The swagger, yeah. This is just something that's going to happen. It's going to go bang, bang, bang. And that's where I do wonder about both Coutinho and Sturridge. If this idea of, like, for instance, Sturridge is half an hour when he comes on against Watford, is half an hour of Daniel Sturridge going, you think these lads are good? Look at how good I am. And I almost wonder if they're not reveling in it enough. If in both of those games they've almost gone, they're almost trying to be too professional. I don't know quite whether or not I'm phrasing this the right way, that they're almost trying to go, right, we've got 1-0, let's just hold this for a while, save our energy, and then we're going to go again. Whereas what they should be doing is going, lads, this is great, we're 1-0 up against these here, let's just cut loose and play our football. I could be talking complete broken biscuits, but it doesn't seem to me as though it's likely to be, when in the cold light of day, it's likely to be that this manager, especially this manager's letting a football team be complacent 2 weeks on the bounce.
No, I don't envisage that he's the type of manager who would allow that sort of complacency, but or think that it's a thing that can be allowed, but that's not how football turns out. I mean, you don't allow for 30-yard free kicks. That's not something you get on the training ground.
But we haven't been good for the 5 minutes, maybe even... we were good till 10, and then 10 till 25, we're not very good.
I think I'll take just the West Ham game. I've watched a bit of West Ham recently because they've been playing Man United a bit. And I thought they were decent enough in both games where I think it takes West Ham to go down a little bit to respond. Almost, and you can see almost from Randolph's reaction for Origi's goal, sort of how much it meant to him. So I think West Ham have had a bit of a say in it. I think they had a bit of a wake-up call because we scored so early. But coming in, how can I put it? The swagger's definitely gone from Liverpool. And I'd felt that prior to Bournemouth, to be honest with you. Who's the game before Leeds?
There's the 0-0 against Southampton. There's the 0-0 Southampton and the Sunderland.
Yeah, and I felt in them games it wasn't quite looking as fluid as it was against Watford and Leicester and them sides. And we haven't really had the settled 11 that we did have. I mean, that was probably yesterday was probably the closest thing to our first 11, but you're missing maybe the key ingredients in Coutinho. So there's been a bit of messing around. Like I had it down in my mind that the likes of Chan was slowing us down a little bit, and we weren't as fluid because of that. And then there was another change against Bournemouth. There was no Matip, Lucas was in and whatnot. So I don't know. I think there seems to be like a bit of a confidence issue, which seems mad when you've had... I mean, if you take this as a normal season, it would be a good start to the season, wouldn't it? But just the position they've been in, considering they've been to Arsenal and beaten them, and been to Chelsea and beaten them, and are already finding themselves behind them after, 12 games or something. You shouldn't be in that position, because the results that you haven't managed to get are against sides. We did the Unwrap show the other week, Rob, where you go, well, what points do you get from these games? You go, well, Liverpool, Bournemouth, 3 points. Liverpool, West Ham, 3 points. And it's not working out that way.
Yeah, I agree with Paul that I think West Ham had a little more to do with it than we're inclined to give them credit for, and maybe complacency is a slight factor in as much as we've done our away complacency, we did our home complacency here, because it was the first time that we've, I think, pegged the team back, taken the lead, that their response hasn't been, oh shit, we're going to get hammered. If you look at the example of most of the other teams that have come to Anfield, they haven't actually opened up at 1-0 down. If anything, they've gone deeper initially. And West Ham didn't. West Ham just went, fuck it. We're just not going to... They went hell for leather at us. And I think that threw us. I think we're off balance because of personnel issues. I think we're off balance because I think Bournemouth was probably psychologically a seismic shock. I think that would have really... That would have had to... I don't think we can underestimate how much that must have reverberated around Melwood for most of last week. And I think West Ham played on that really well. They played on the keeper's fragility. And at 1-1... You know what? It's just another test in a season. We can psychoanalyse, we can look at big pictures, we can look at endemic problems, but the tale of this will be written in the next few games. It's as simple as that. It's too early for us to call this as some big, as a pattern. And that's not me trying to be positive. I just can't say it at the moment.
There is, you mentioned the foot off the gas, the next thing there is to point out the question marks around Paul Hogan, the defending and the goalkeeper. If you talk about the goal, if you think about the opening goal, the West Ham equaliser, the free kick, there's 2 headers in the Liverpool box where I think on both occasions lads could have just put the foot through it, but it's one of them we've all played when you get this thing, I'm heading this. It happens. It happens quite quickly back to back, so it looks a bit scruffy. Then there's the way in which we're constantly trying to nick the ball back. Lallana, rather than stand his man up, feels as though it's there to be won, gives a bit of a cheap free kick away. The wall isn't great. It's been looked at, the wall, by a number of different people, and people have pointed out there's a couple of weaknesses in there, and West Ham know what they're doing. And then lastly, the goalkeeper is basically still should save it. His starting position isn't perfect, far from it, but he still should get down to it. It's this catalogue of errors, but I think the key one is the goalkeepers, and that's what he's there for, to dig everyone else out of these little holes they've created for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a defensive point of view, I was a centre-half, but I wasn't a good centre-half, so putting my foot through the ball was pretty much what I did. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of that in that team. They are that good. I think sometimes they know that's that good, and they try and play when they don't need to play, and maybe they just need to get rid and put the boot through it.
Just get it down the other end of the pitch.
And it's not any of the natural thing to do for any of them. So I think there's a bit of that for me, and I think there was a number of times in that game where that needed to happen, and we haven't got that player. I think Carragher brought that up at one point, and obviously he was the perfect player for that. He was more than willing to put his foot through. So that was one of it for me. In terms of the wall and stuff, I sit sort of row 61 in the Kop, and you could see it from the beginning that he was going further and further across. But we were saying before that I still think he should have saved it. I don't know what he was thinking at the time, whether he was giving him that chance to tell him where he wanted him to put it, but it just didn't come off in that sense. I don't know.
Am I all right to go on the goalkeeper then?
As much as you want.
Yeah, okay. The thing for me is with him. John Gibbons put in his match ratings yesterday about sort of he likes to start from 5 and work back, and I was thinking about where you've made these decisions to change key areas, and we've done it again at left back this season. And you go, okay, you've got Milner and you've got Moreno, and they're the 2 players playing for that position there. So you take the goalkeeper out of it for a minute. You go, all right, you're going to play James Milner, who's not a left back there, but you look at across all his attributes and you go, you try and point score it a little bit, almost like top trumps or something like that, where, Moreno's faster than Milner, he's left-footed, but, Milner will concentrate better, his final balls better, blah, blah, blah. And you probably get to the end of it and go, well, Milner wins based on these things. Do it with the goalkeeper. I've seen him about 10 games now for Liverpool. I can't tell you one area he wins. I literally can't, and I feel I know Adam's got his own opinion on it, and people are saying, well, the defence kept so many clean sheets and stuff. Simon Mignolet makes the occasional error, and it's cost us points. Sunderland last season. There's loads of examples of it where he's done silly things. I would say for 90%, 95% of the time, he's a very good goalkeeper. I've seen him made stops that other goalkeepers in the Premier League can't make. Some can, De Gea and Courtois and Lloris. No, undoubtedly better goalkeepers. I don't see anything from this lad that's anywhere in his league. And
you don't think his kicking is...
No, I don't. I honestly don't. There's a bit of it where I think it's all right, but it's not.
It's better than Mignolet. I'm not saying it's great. It is better than Mignolet.
Is it marginal though, Rob? Because what I'm seeing of him, it's not like where you look at Bravo and you go, oh, he is good with his feet. But I'd say Joe Hart is generally better goalkeeper than him. But I can see through the way Man City are always on the ball, why you'd want someone who can almost act like a sweeper.
Yeah.
I get that. I don't see it with Karius. He's not this big commanding goalkeeper. I watched Lloris the other day and the ball drops in the very, very corner of the 18-yard box and he's out and he's dominating. I thought we were getting this sort of keeper who was better with his feet and a bit more commanding, good at crosses, everything that Mignolet sort of wasn't. I'm not saying he was terrible at it, Mignolet, but there was flaws in his game, and there was points. There's shows I've done for the Anfield Wrap, and I've lynched him. But you've got to make a decision on this now because it's costing us points in the season. We can't afford to throw them away, and you might kill him, Karius, but he's £4 million. We've done it to more expensive players in the past. It's four Balotellis, for example. The value just
did it to Benteke last season.
Yeah, we've done it to loads. Markovic, we've done it to loads of people. You've just got to pull him now because he's not good enough. He might be good enough in a couple of years' time, but he's not. As I think it was Carragher who said it yesterday. He's not 19 like De Gea was. He's 23. He's played 100 league games. Mignolet's probably of the same age when he signs for Liverpool, and I'm telling you now, Mignolet's a much better goalkeeper.
You see that. I'm not a Karius, sort of cheerleader, and I think we've had a bit of banter on Twitter about it and stuff. But I'm not. All I want is the best goalkeeper for Liverpool, and the big problem I've got is I don't think Mignolet is a better goalkeeper, and I think that there's a bit of a rewriting of the narrative of how poor Mignolet was a lot of the time. Actually,
sorry, can I come across you? I just think I got that with Danny Ings last season, where people were writing them off to be this. Well, sorry, weren't writing them off. We're making them out to be this unbelievable striker where, well, he's got this quality and we're missing this, blah, blah, blah. Mignolet saves shots.
But I think my thing is I think the goalkeepers are as bad as each other, but they're bad in different ways. That's what I think the big thing is. For me, I think if you've got a situation where you don't have a huge amount of faith in either goalkeeper, then you go with the one that lets the team do more of what you want the team to do. And the back line definitely drops deeper with Mignolet. They're a lot less willing to pass the ball back to Mignolet. They don't trust him to kick it, whatever else. They push a lot higher up with Karius because he comes out of his box, and they're more willing to pass the ball back to him. And that allows us to play a better style of football, I think. Now, in that situation, when you've got the two of those things, the obvious thing for me personally is I would say, well, you give it to the one that lets the team play better if you don't really trust either of them. And I think if you look at, say, the 4 goals that we conceded at Arsenal and the 4 that we conceded at Bournemouth, I think the keepers could have done better in 2 or 3 of those goals in both games in totally different ways. So they're not, I just don't think there's enough to separate them on shot stopping, blah, 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 that's there. And, I know I've been banging on about this before we even sacked Rodgers, that I can't understand how questions about the goalkeeping coach aren't being asked by the press. I know it gets people talking about it on Twitter and stuff, but you look at I know the drop off in Reina happened before Achterberg came in, but you've got Reina at the end of his Liverpool career was basically all over the show. You've got Brad Jones dives the wrong way at shots. You've got Bogdan concedes from corners. You've got Mignolet, virtually every shot on target goes in goal, and you've got the problems going on with Karius now. The only thorough thing through all of that is the goalkeeping coach, right? And the big thing... Well, sorry, Neil, just the one thing I want to say is just that the big thing for me with that question of the goalkeeping coaches, I don't know what they do. I haven't got a clue. I've never been a goalkeeper. I've never been there behind the scenes. But I assume one of the things they might do is help a keeper set up for a free kick, for example. That's something I think they probably would do. And we've had 2 examples now of 2 different goalkeepers setting up a wall abysmally being in totally the wrong position for free kicks. Sunderland, Mignolet with Sunderland last year when the ball was outside the goal, and Karius yesterday. And I think the one thing I'll say just before you come in, Neil, is that I know someone who watches the Bundesliga religiously, and they said to me, honestly, he was the second best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga last season behind what's his face. He genuinely is a very good goalkeeper. And Andrew Beasley tweeted me saying, at some point, questions have got to be asked about how we're signing keepers that have got brilliant shot-stopping stats that all of a sudden can't stop shots when they come to Liverpool. And that's whichever goalkeeper you're going with, they're both dodgy, so what are we going to do?
Well, but on this, I just want to do this thing on the goalkeeper coach, because I think it's important. What I don't understand is the surety with which people use the language around the goalkeeping coach. I don't understand these people who feel as though they're comfortable to say with such certainty that there's a problem with X when they don't know. And there's another thing here as well, which is that Kenny Dalglish, Brendan Rodgers and Jurgen Klopp, all three of whom were pretty aggressive in terms of sacking staff throughout the time as they've been Liverpool, whilst they've been at Liverpool, have kept the same goalkeeper coach. And they've been pretty aggressive, as is my point here. You know what I mean? They've made
Chris Morgan, who was well revered.
Yeah, they've made quite significant changes, Adam. And just this is my thing on this: is that not one of them. Now it could be, and I think it's very possible that you could argue that they might just have a blind spot where it's concerned. All of them, because they're very much different types of managers than those who care about that sort of stuff. So I'm not saying that, but what I find difficult with the rhetoric around it is this idea that that's three people who I know much more about football and goalkeeper coaches than me and practically anybody else, like 99.9% of the worldwide population, and they haven't sacked him.
I totally accept that completely, and I am not saying if we get rid of John Atterberg, the whole world will be brilliant, our goalkeepers will be amazing. I don't know that's the case. What I am saying is that I can't say that that's a coincidence that all four of those goalkeepers, five of those goalkeepers, whatever it is that I've mentioned, have all been put, and all three of those managers, none of them had a decent goalkeeper none of them had a goalkeeper that you would say he was brilliant during their time at the club, would you? None of them you would go that the goalkeeper was nailed down brilliant. No, so I totally agree with you, and I do bang the drum, but it's because I can't see how it's a coincidence that there are so many problems.
Don't you just think they're not very good goalkeepers?
Well, but that's obviously a possibility, but all I can go is off my mate who watches the Bundesliga. I can't, I've got no opinion on it whatsoever on how he performed there, but my mate who does watched it all the time, said to me, you've got a steal when we bought Karius. He's brilliant. He's going to, you're going to be blown away by him. That's all I can go off. So if that's the case, and the stats, Andrew Beasley, as I say, tweeted saying that he had good shot stopping stats before he came to us. So all I'm saying is that must be an area where there's something weird going on. And if we'd have bought Torres, say, right, who was banging in the goals left, right and centre in Spain, came over to us and couldn't hit a barn door, and Sean Dundee was the attacking coach, wouldn't we say, what have we got Sean Dundee as the attacking coach for? That's the sort of thing that I mean is that, I don't know, it might not fix anything.
But I don't think we do that. I think that, you look at, for instance, bad transfers. You buy a bad outfield player. You buy an outfield player, you spend 32 million quid on Christian Benteke, and all everyone talks about is how the system doesn't suit him. When he struggles, no one's saying I don't know Pep Linders as coaching.
But that's which I think is it's kind of my point, because it's not actually a big conversation that we've been having about the goalkeeping coach anymore. There was the chat about Roger should bring in a defensive coach when we were having all those where we were conceding left, right, and centre, couldn't set up a defence. That was a conversation we should bring in a goalkeeping coach. Now, as I say, I don't think it's a solve all whatever. I think it's balmy that we haven't had a decent goalkeeper since Reina when it was in his thing.
I'm going to keep going on this because this gets my attention, and then I'll come over to you now, Rob. Do Everton have a good goalkeeper coach? What's Man City's goalkeeper coach like? Because my point on this is that there has been for 3 seasons criticism of Manchester City's goalkeeping and the decisions that they're making, and that involves now 2 goalkeepers, one of whom's kept goal for England. Everton have had Tim Howard, they've got Stecklenberg and Rob Les, and people are saying they're not very good goalkeepers. They're not criticising the coaching, and they've had Tim Howard every season, broadly speaking, for 5 seasons. It got worse for Everton.
Again, as I say, I'm not saying that I'm definitely right and everybody's definitely right. I totally accept what your point is there, and I think it's a valid one, and I don't think I'm right. But what I think is that we haven't got a goalkeeper we can trust, and we haven't had one since before Atterberg became the goalkeeping coach. Now, whatever, you can call that total coincidence. He might be brilliant. He might be the best goalkeeping coach in the entire world. We don't really know. But I can't understand how I wouldn't trust either of our goalkeepers, and I wouldn't trust us to buy a decent one either, because we brought, the goalkeeping coach, I would assume, is part of the conversation on a transfer about which goalkeepers to come in, which means that he's signed off on Adam Bogdan, who couldn't catch a cold. So
we don't know that.
No, but you would assume that's the guy. I mean,
good
again,
managers have signed off.
But it just confuses me, I think, is the issue.
I want to half agree with you and half disagree. On Akterberg, I just think I'm with Neil on this one. I just don't think we can know. I mean, I'm thinking from 1991 till Pepe Reina comes in 2006, we didn't really have a keeper anybody was happy with. Jersey has about 6 months maybe, but generally we're not happy, and that's all pre-Akterberg, I think. So
it is, yeah, because he doesn't come until after Valero, does he?
I think there's a human nature thing to look for a scapegoat there, but the first scapegoat should be the manager, really, with the keeper, because
exactly.
whatever the goalkeeping coach is doing, I mean, whenever you see training things, it tends to be about conditioning and things like that, and maybe sharpening up their reflexes. The guy who says how many yards you give between you and the defence, the guy who says you kick long or you kick to your fullback, has to be the manager.
Yeah, I'm talking about the setup of the wall, though, which I think is going to. I don't think that's going to be the manager. I don't think that is. I mean, we don't know. I suppose is the whole point, which is totally fair. But I think if you said to me, we're going to go and buy a goalkeeper in January, I'd be getting the party poppers out. I'm not, let's all stick with Karius, he's going to be amazing. I don't think he is, but I don't think Mignolet's the solution. That's my big problem.
This side of it I'm agreeing with you on, because I think, you know what, if from next game on to for the next 10 games, Karius just goes on to have 9 out of 10 performances, I promise you, when we go back and look at these first 10, where we will reappraise these first 10 and go, do you know what? He was only just out on that free kick. Maybe his confidence was shut. What I'm getting at is, I don't think we'll look at. I think we might look at these as confidence issues rather than this is what he's about as a keeper. He doesn't. Paul's top trumps list. I agree totally with you. He's not scoring. He's not scoring anywhere. Even his much venerated, or potentially venerated kicking was exposed when he kicks one out for a goal kick.
I've seen him do it at Wigan as well.
Yeah, but hang on. I've got you.
No, it's all right. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No one's taking me down this season. Let's put it this way. Yeah, a keeper I slaughtered the last year and a half, Joe Hart. Someone said he's coming January 1 now. I'm actually delighted. Having said that, I can live in both universes at once. I don't necessarily think Karius is a dead project.
Nor do I.
I agree with you. I think we may go back to Mignolet with rose-tinted goggles. I totally agree with your point about I think the team functions better with Karius, for better or for worse, than it does with Mignolet. You can see, yes, my mind's eye, I'm seeing some saves Mignolet made. I can't remember a single save Karius has made yet.
But I don't think that's fair.
Apart from a couple of star jumps. But this doesn't mean Karius is dead in the water.
But I think he's done a couple. I think he has done a couple of good saves that we're sort of forgetting about. He said he was a brilliant one-on-one again in the Bournemouth match that he saved.
That's only the star jump saves.
But there was one in the match yesterday as well where I think, and this is what I'm talking about when I say one keeper's. I think they're both bad, but in their own way. The moment when there's a long ball and it's Lovren and their striker in a foot race, and their striker's got Lovren beat, and Karius comes out and heads it out for a throw-in. Mignolet doesn't even leave his line for that. So, but we can't. But that's not a save. That's not a big save. That's not a big moment.
Yeah.
But I think it's something which the goalkeeper has done, which the other one wouldn't have done. But the other one maybe would have saved the simple one last week where it rebounds in front of the striker. I don't know.
I think you're trading by going back to Mignolet. You're trading one set of problems back for another set of problems. For me, the defence look more comfortable with Karius on the ball. They're more willing to go back to him. They weren't willing to go back to Mignolet at all. And the guy I was sitting next to, I was saying, I actually think Mignolet would have saved that free kick. I think he probably would have saved that free kick. But I also think there probably would have been 10 other situations within that game where our back four would have been put into difficult positions, and who knows what might have happened. Maybe in that position that we were talking about before, where actually we might have conceded goals in different ways. So I think, for me, I stick with Karius in the sense of I think he fits better with what we're trying to do at the moment.
Is the Paul Hogan first? Rob before says if he's blaming anyone for anything, he's blaming the manager. And is there sort of a wider conversation here, which is about picking your moments a little bit? And it's not the manager doesn't know, but the idea that you start every season on trying to win the league fund. And that now we're in a position where I believe that the money was there. People can say that they disagree with that, but I believe the money was there. Liverpool made a profit in the window. And Liverpool, even if they've got a bargain, have taken maybe a bit more of a gamble on what's a pretty key position, a difficult position to take a gamble in, than they actually had to in the summer window. And this is where I think that there's, the manager's been fantastic since he's come in. This is part of the strikes and gutters of football, is that at some point somebody on a show like this has to say, maybe, just maybe, it was one to do 20-25 million on, even if he doesn't believe in that kind of thing, to get someone in who's a bit more of a finished product, even if he wants this idea we're all in constant development, that it might have been worth doing that, rather than thinking, you know what, can do a bit of clever business here, I like this fella, and I think he'll only get better in the next 3 seasons.
Possibly. I mean, I think goalkeepers is an unusual position.
I think
isn't
it's really hard.
I don't think values of goalkeepers work the same as outfield players neither. So,
right.
you know, what did we pay for Pepe Reina? It was
6 million in 2000.
Even at the time, it wasn't a lot of money at the time, and yet he was. At that point, he was already one of the goalkeepers who you were looking at as the next top goal, one of the top goalkeepers.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, so I don't think value works in the same way as with an outfield player. So obviously, there's a select number of goalkeepers you could spend £25 million on, and you know what you're buying, but anything below that, them up and coming goalkeepers, it's really hard to judge.
And City have spent a lot of money on Bravo.
Yeah.
As an example, to get Bravo, they've spent a lot of money there to get him in, and there's question marks around him in a not dissimilar way.
Should we have bought 2, Neil? Should we have done a 2003? Personally, I looked at it as Mignolet as he's not good enough to compete. I would have fucked him straight off and brought in 2 and gambled that way.
I think that I sort of think that there's something in that, but I'd say the opposite. I think this is where this conversation always gets out of hand. And you and I have done this in the past. Mignolet is not good enough to compete. Mignolet is one of the best. He's somewhere between 5th and 10th best goalkeeper in the country, dependent on a couple of little factors. When we sat here last year and I got you to list all the players you'd buy in the summer, no, this is serious, and I got you to list them all, and you named 7 goalkeepers. You didn't name 15.
No.
And but I think that this is part of the problem where this whole conversation ends up getting really, really polarised. Not least because people were determined to say that Mignolet was really, really bad. He wasn't. He just isn't good enough for us to be where we want to be. And this is Adam's point now, is that we may well are now be in a situation where we managed to end up with 2 goalkeepers who may not be good enough for where we want to be, and that's problematic. I think that there's De Gea, and I think that it's almost skewed by the fact that De Gea is so good, that De Gea and Courtois are so good. Cech has very much become he saves everything he should goalkeeper, and then there's just a bit of a gap. I even think Lloris is overrated, to be honest with you. I think there's then a bit of a gap, and then there's a lot of lads knocking round who are all. I think Lloris is sort of in the gap between those 3. Everyone else, the sort of Lloris very much in 4th for me. But that's just my view in terms of what I see.
The stylistic point that both that Adam first made and that Paul made, I'm looking at yesterday and thinking, do you know what, Mignolet might be the best keeper West Ham could ever have. He might be the best keeper.
That's exactly what he is. That's a great shout.
But so he may be the 7th, 8th in the league, but for the way we play,
exactly.
Maybe he's the 15th. That's our problem, I think.
Well, no, because I don't think for one second Darren Randolph's boss with his feet.
No, okay, but the lad for Southampton who was it the other week who's kicking like a genius.
No, that's Forster. You're thinking his kicking's awful.
Who's the Sunderland guy?
Pickford. Pickford looks like he can kick like a dream, but he's still going out on the island. Sunderland's having a lovely time with his mates. The idea that you lash him in goal for Liverpool, I mean, trust me, I think he looks fabulous, and I'd do it. But like, what I mean is that he's still got loads of maturing to do as a footballer. Even right now, he's not played 20 first team games yet.
Do you think there's an ambition problem with goalkeeper? Because I think the minute FSG turns up, and I'm an FSG fan, the goalkeeper was always seen as a problematic area because of the wages involved with Reina, that they went, well, there's a place we can save money.
You might be right, Paul, but I think the thing I'd say on that is that, for instance, you just look at Ferguson's record with goalkeepers. He bought 1 million of the bastards, and he just turned them round, and he gets 6 to 12 months, and it'd be like, right, that's him done. He's out the way now.
Tottenham had a problem with Paul Robinson. They then went and bought Carlo Cudicini, Brad Friedel, and Hugo Lloris. There's been no problem since, because they bought sure things. Them 3 are all sure things. One's a top player in the France side. The other 2 were top quality goalkeepers in the Premier League.
Does with Van der Sar in the end. He actually gets bored because Van der Sar wasn't his normal
That's
kind of pick.
£15 million, 30-odd-year-old, from Juventus.
So who's the Van der Sar? Okay, not Van der Sar became, but the Van der Sar he was then. Who's even the Brad Friedel? Who are the sure things?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's a tough one.
For me,
mediocre sure.
For me, you're looking at last season. We were all pointing the finger and say the defence was rickety because of Mignolet, and Mignolet had a big role to play in that, and actually the back 4, apart from it was the back 4's the unsurety in the back 4 was because of Mignolet. This season the back 4 look, and obviously coming off the last 2 games it's hard to say, but they look a lot more comfortable, they look safer, and for me it's that whole argument of, well, surely you've got to give Karius some credit for being part of that, because if you're going to slate a goalkeeper for being part of a bad defence and it's his fault, then when we've got a good defence, he's got to be given some kind of credit as well.
I'll sort of counter-argue and I'll probably come up against opposition. I think if you had signed Sam Mignolet in the summer and judged him on what he's done this season, and this season alone, there'd have been no problems. Like, I was furious when he lost his place, because I just thought, what's this lad done to earn his place? Because I'm a great believer in the fact that the form should count, and I thought Mignolet was in great form. I thought he came in against Tottenham and had a good game. I thought he came in against Leeds and looked excellent. Made a couple of good saves there. And if this is a case now where Karius just can't be dropped because he's made his choice, you're his number one, well, what's the point of Mignolet being here? He's probably going to go in January. What more can I do? And there's been seasons in the past where whoever was on the bench for Mignolet will have felt exactly the same. Brad Jones, there has to be the same way as if James Milner's having a stinker, Alberto Moreno's got every right to go knock on the door and go, what's going on here? You know, he's having a mare. Throw me in, see what happens. It should work the same for goalkeeper.
Should it?
Yeah, I think it should. Why
So I'm Simon.
Sorry, Neil. We're all talking in the summer about healthy competition in the goalkeeping position.
Well,
it's not competition.
I would never talk about healthy competition in a goalkeeping position, and the reason why is because I flip it on its head. I'm Simon Mignolet, and we're under pressure, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily having that good a day, and I know that I make one mistake and I'll get bombed back out for this fella because it's healthy competition. No, it did, and it shouldn't have done, and genuinely shouldn't have done, and it happened the season before with Brad Jones, and it shouldn't have done, not least because Brad Jones literally jumped the wrong way, and however bad John Achterberg is, he's not making people do that. You know, there is sort of the point where I think, but this is part of the mania of that, and I do sort of wonder to a certain extent if one of the things that's been in the manager's head is these all like this fella in goal. I'll just make this change because I think that this other fella might be all right. I wonder if that's been there because he's very into the way in which an atmosphere works and the way in which the whole side works. I do wonder if that's been there because we've all lost our shit a little bit on Mignolet in that he's quite good. And you're right, he might not be the right player for us. And if you want to say me, I'll make a change tomorrow. But if you'd asked me in the summer, I'd have said sound. But that's not my point. My point is, in the same way that I think you might be right, Rob, that in 10 games' time, you might all be looking at each other and going, you know what, I think Karius is quite good. The question is whether or not in 10 games' time, we're looking at it going, Christ, I wish we had those 5 points.
Yeah.
I think the answer to your question, Paul, about what did he do, I think it is more than just, you know, saving shots or whatever. And I think my point about how the team plays, I think that's what's in Klopp's head more than anything else. Because I just don't think there's an argument about the fact that the defence drops deeper with Mignolet. They're not as happy with him. They're not as comfortable with him. Their heads go. They don't know how to pass to him. They don't know what he's going to do. I think that's been going on for months. And I think the big thing for Klopp is, do you know what? They're both going to let goals in that they shouldn't let in. But this one lets the team play how I want the team to play.
Okay, I was going to do it in a question, but we've been talking about it 7 weeks. The second half of the game is, I think, if anything, Liverpool have dug themselves out of the hole they were in. They get the goal, Paul Hogan, 47, 48 minutes, and it's come off the back of serious pressure. I mean, you know, it was a real, how can you withstand this? Oh, it transpires, just can't. So it's a spell of pressure, suddenly it was there. And then it didn't go off the boil straight away, but the same thing happened again. We got to about 60, 65, and Liverpool you weren't clear where it was coming from. And I think that's when I've looked back at the game, I think that's what's killed me is Mane aside, and I think Mane has a good game.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Mane has a good game. Mane aside, in terms of those attacking players and the full-backs, so everyone bar the two centre-halves, Klavan has a good second half, everyone bar the two centre-halves and Henderson, I'm looking at them, the other 7 outfield players, and I just don't know where it's coming from. Yeah. I'm watching Nathaniel Klein lump the ball into the box or just take the wrong option, and I think that's what I'm watching. I'm watching with, again, maybe with a little nod towards Milner, of those 7 players who you can say are the attacking players, the 2 full-backs, the 2 ahead of Henderson, the 3 forwards. I'm going, where's it coming from here, lads? Where's it coming from?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I sort of alluded to it before, was that they just don't look quite as fluid as they did before, and I think Firmino playing in that central position means he's coming out of it all the time, and there's people creating spaces in different ways. Origi is I don't think Origi's done anything wrong. 4 goals, 4 games. You can't argue with that. But
I'm just about to, but keep going.
But he's very much in that central position, and I don't think that fluidity is the same as it was. Mane quite likes Mane will go wandering, and he did. I think both of the goals come from Mane.
Yeah, he goes wide left on both.
Yeah, so. But it just doesn't seem to happen quite as naturally. Firmino doesn't look as comfortable in that position, and the more that's happening, the more the fullbacks become more and more our outlet out wide. We seem to get, as we get more and more, or we lose more and more patience, we seem to become narrower and narrower and narrower. And then it becomes literally, can Klein or Milner put a good ball into the box? And that's set up for West Ham for me. West Ham could do that all day.
They gave Milner the freedom of the park, and Milner, good as he can be, you know, if the movement's not right ahead of him, he just slings it in. In the first half, Henderson found himself just slinging it in. Klein was slinging it in. Firmino, for me, I'm wondering, because he had a knock the other week, I'm wondering if he wasn't 100%. He didn't look himself to me.
He didn't last week either, but I think a big part of that is where he is on the pitch.
Yeah.
It might be, but there's something wasn't Roberto Firmino about that performance for me. And I know you're going to do it in detail, but Origi was the problem in twofold, from my point of view. Is one, the telepathy between the front three was gone. They didn't. Whereas with Coutinho and the other two, they knew what they were doing. Suddenly with Origi, they didn't know, and Origi's just not as good as Coutinho by any stretch of the imagination. But he wasn't. But time and time again, you saw the last pass about to be made. West Ham were a bit high up the pitch. You thought, this is made. We're in here. And Origi hesitated. He'd either drop a yard or go a yard. And Firmino, and they'd all look frustrated. And time again that happened. Yeah. And Origi just didn't have a very good game.
Do you think he plays if Jan's fit?
Origi, I don't know. I think he might not do, because I think that the manager might have one eye on wanting to keep one of Chan and Wijnaldum fit anyway for the Borough game, which we'll come on to talk about. But in general, I think the Origi thing's fascinating, because he's now on 4 goals in 4 games. He's literally scored a goal a game. And in the meantime, I actually think his all-round performances, if you take the goal out, really have not been very good or very helpful towards Liverpool's general cause. But when you say, if you take the goal out, you sound ridiculously churlish, because if Divock Origi is sitting next to Adam right now in the spare seat, he's saying, it's my job, mate. And that's...
Take it out of Costa's game, for example.
Exactly, yeah, as a really good example. And I sort of wonder that... For me, the question isn't just what do you think he does if Chan's fit. For me, the question is what do you think he does if Sturridge is fit. And I think right now, if Sturridge is fit and Coutinho isn't, he's playing a front two of Origi and Sturridge. And I think he's doing that with Mane in behind and giving Firmino a couple of games to rest up with whatever it is, this little thing that I think he probably is carrying to a certain extent, and maybe having one eye then on changing it for Middlesbrough. Because I think it's really important to point out that I think it's easy to look at the bench at the minute, and loads of people are going to go, look at our bench there, and it's not as good as X, Y or Z. We play 3 up front. If you list our 6 options for up front, 3 of them are currently injured because you include Danny Ings, and you can say, well, he's Danny Ings as much as you want, but he'd literally either be starting that game or an option off the bench on 60, 65 to change it up and shake it up. And I think if you look at any side, and I think we may end up needing one more, because I think we may need to cover Mane anyway, not just the Cup of Nations, but in general. But I think if you look at almost any side, though, they don't really go much deeper than 6 for 3. There's not a lot of sides knocking round who are going deeper than 6 for a position where they're playing 3. I don't know if you were to take Costa, Pedro and Willian out of Chelsea's front 3, I'm not quite sure whether Batshuayi possibly plays the 5th. And they force Oscar in, but he's not a front 3 player. No. He's a midfielder.
I think only Arsenal maybe have depth there, don't
but
they?
Only in attacking midfield. I mean, you know, again, if they've got 2 options for the front for the front.
Welbeck and Giroud.
They've got
Perez.
Well, Welbeck's just a write-off. So they're currently playing Perez. If for their front 1 that they tend to play is out, if 2 are out at the minute, you know, we've got 3 out from 6. I just think I think we can get our own backs. But where I'm frustrated, though, Adam, is Liverpool got to show more patience. They've got to show more patience, but then they've simultaneously also got to take the opportunity. 56 touches or 62 touches or how many touches, because different people count these things differently. You have in the penalty area. Liverpool should be scoring more than just 2 goals. Frankly, they really should be finding other ways to get the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, it was frustrating. I thought I was disappointed.
West Ham defended well.
They did. Yeah, you've got to say that. But then at the same time, 62 touches in the box, you know, it doesn't matter how well you defend. If you've got an attacker who's clinical, you're scoring 3 or 4 out of that. So, you know, I was disappointed with Klein's final ball yesterday. I found that really frustrating, you know, and you can accept it a little bit more with Milner, perhaps, because he's just not that sort of player, but both of them were just doing brainless things that I can't get my head around at all why they're doing it. But I think Rob's point about Origi and the sort of the matchup between all of the front 3 is really interesting, and I agree completely with the telepathy between them. And I saw Paul Cope tweeted something yesterday saying he's become like the archetype centre forward where he's bagging your goals but doing nothing else for the team. And I think that's a really good summary of what he's doing. Yeah, he's scoring, but I think as a team we're losing a lot by having him in this. We might be getting a goal, but we could be getting 2 or 3 goals with a front three that understands itself
or
better.
getting out of a Bournemouth with 3-1.
Well, yeah, exactly, or doing that, and because his performance is. It's not just take the goal out and his performance is mediocre. I think take the goal out, his performance has been poor the last 2 games, and that's the difference. I think so. You do sound churlish saying take the goal out because he's saying that's my job, but his job's to be part of a team, and he's not even doing that at the moment, which is why I really rate him. I think he's going to be some player, and when he's on it, like there was like a 10-minute patch yesterday when he was really on it, and no one could touch him, and he was bustling people off the ball on the touchline and powering forward and all that, but. Let's be honest. His goal, even that is because the goalie drops it on his foot. He doesn't do something special to kind of any. But if Firmino's up front in the same place, but that's what I'm saying. But Firmino is probably there, isn't he? If he's playing in the front in the central position. Maybe. So I think I just think that
I'm not talking John Aldridge out of a career.
No, I just think that of all the situation at the moment, we're losing patience. But I think we've also. I think Origi's a bit of a blunt instrument, so it's harder to be patient when you haven't got that incision.
I think Origi's got a big game in him where he contributes. I mean, people forgetting this. The second half against Tottenham when he plays with Sturridge, he runs the show. He's not just hanging on the shoulder, hoping for a chance and taking it nicely. He runs the show. The thing we've got about Origi, a point I made at the end of the window, and obviously I always want us to buy one more player, but I did feel, take Neil's point about 6 options. It sounds a nice number, but...
No, I think it should be 7.
Well, okay, but I said it at the beginning of the season, and now I'm counting the vindication to a degree here. I said, Origi's raw. Whatever anyone says about him, he's raw. He had purple patch last season, but he also had a patch before then where you think, what the fuck is Origi? Yeah, and we can see this now in phases again. Sturridge, people say, look, he's been back for a few months. But he always had a 1-week injury that could become a 6-week injury and maybe beyond. That was always in Sturridge. And Ings, as Paul said earlier, Ings hadn't proven himself really at the top level that we need that's comparable to a Firmino, Coutinho and Mane level. So there were question marks against the immediate backup 3 for me. Of course, when we're flying, the front 3 are fit and you go, oh, look, we've got Sturridge on the bench and Origi. It looks great. I think we were short at the start here, and I do think we need to act to fix this.
I think... I'm not often one to defend age as a thing for defence. He is 21, Origi, and I don't think you can expect him to be. How can I put it? To be putting in the performances of Sturridge and the like. Because a little bit. I think because he's been around a while and we signed him a while ago. I think people forget he's 21, Origi, where. I think people will be a bit more forgiving, or are a bit more forgiving of the likes of Rashford and Iheanacho. And Iheanacho, I think there's 6 months between them. They score goals, but you think, oh, he's a young lad, blah blah. Origi's in the same boat, and don't get me wrong.
That's really fair.
I think. How can I put it?
That's my point. He's entitled to be raw.
Oh yeah, he is. He's very much entitled to be raw, Rob. But I don't think we cut him enough slack for his age sometimes, because he is. Let's put it this way, Roberto Firmino's our first choice striker, isn't he? Then you've got Daniel Sturridge, and then we're having to move due to Coutinho's injury, our best player to playing wide left, and then playing a kid through the middle. It's not Origi's fault that Coutinho can't play with Firmino almost. The fact that we're not as fluid is down to the fact that our best player's not playing every week as well.
You can argue that the issue is that we haven't got. It's actually that what we're missing is the next lad along the line who covers Mane and Coutinho, not that we're missing someone else to cover that number 9 position.
Firmino should never have to move left or right. That's my thing. If Firmino's fit and firing, he's the number 9. The fact that the lad on the left-hand side in Coutinho has got injured, I think it's not really Origi's fault, because the system has then had to change and you've lost the best of your best player.
I think you can move Firmino, but you've got to have Sturridge next to him then. I think that's straightforward, because you can argue that Sturridge...
We've seen this once
Leicester,
before.
and the actual opening goal, even though I don't think he touches the ball, the opening goal's because Firmino and Sturridge are swapping. And I think that there's an issue, which is that, and I think it's just a really interesting psychological issue, that after he plays against Burnley, Daniel Sturridge talks loads about wanting to play through the middle rather than play wide. He does the interview. But actually, when he played against Leicester, where he theoretically started in the middle, he did loads of his best work work drifting wide.
Yeah.
And it's how this is sort of how footballers' mindsets work. Whereas Firmino's quite open to the idea that I'll start here and drift here. But Origi's not that interested in the left conceptually. He's very interested in the right. He pulls that way all the time. He goes and plays that channel. That's why you see a bit more of Mane coming in, I think. So it's not just, I think, the idea that, but you can't do that. I think he can, as long as whoever goes and plays up front in Firmino's stead is constantly creating space for Firmino to come in and fill.
I think that's why it was interesting in the wake of Coutinho's injury that Wijnaldum started on the left against Leeds, didn't he, in the Cup, which I thought was really interesting because it felt a little bit like Klopp was saying, well who's going to play where Coutinho plays because I don't want to move Firmino particularly. And I think you're totally right. The age thing is totally
whether
fair.
Chan would have played as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think your age point is totally fair. But much like you might say about the goalkeeper, there's a league to win, and I think it's totally fair. But that's why I agree with Neil that the recruitment thing is where in January, we're still only 6 points off Chelsea, and if we beat them at Anfield, we're only 3 points off them. So there's still a league to be won if we can get our act together. But that's the key question, isn't it?
I'll tell you what, Adam Smith there segueing nicely, butter away. The graveyard of Liverpool sides in the past, Rob Gutmann.
Yeah.
You and I have both been separately, probably when we didn't even know each other, when we were mere pups. You in your wilderness years, me just graduated from university. We have been at Middlesbrough, watching ice on ball, watching awful things happen at a terrible away in the depths of winter. We're going together on Wednesday night. Are we going to be heartbroken or are we going to be all right?
We're going to be fine. That was then, this is now. What happened then does not affect what happens now. In fact, I'm still got some hazy memories of Torres banging one in at Middlesbrough somewhere along the line. Did we win or draw? I don't know. I think it might just be about the right type of game for the right sort of time. Not too hard that you think, I wouldn't want to go to Arsenal or Chelsea or just this week. But Borough, I think it might bring our steel back out of us, actually. It might bring our focus and determination. Don't get me wrong, it's not 3 points you take for granted.
Borough want the football. I think the Borough want the football. They want to be in control. They like to have the ball themselves. They're solid in the middle of the park. I think it could suit us in that regard. They tactically are a side that sets up to want the ball and look to break on you as well.
And they're to break down, so they might come out a little bit more than they would. I wouldn't want them at Anfield this week. I wouldn't like to be... Do you know what? In a weird sort of way, I'm not sure I'd be thrilled about playing them on a Tuesday night at Anfield this week in the wake of how we've just played. We're ripe to be frustrated by a team that wants to sit deep at the moment. It hasn't been the problem all season, but when your confidence is down, that's something. It may not be far from confident we'll win it, although I think we can. It may not be the worst fixture just right now.
Paul Hogan.
No, I'm still positive. I think there's still even in that game yesterday and the Bournemouth game, some of the football we played superb.
It's easy to overlook it, isn't it, really? Because you're frustrated with either the final ball or the ball or the final effort not coming. But the fact that we got that many touches in the box, they don't want us in their penalty area. Yeah. It's not like they were going, we'll defend the penalty spot. We were playing good stuff to get to that point.
I think we forget. I mean, we hit the crossbar. From where I was sitting, I didn't watch Match of the Day last night because I was just too frustrated. But it looked like a definite penalty to me as well.
Lallana,
100%.
So, it was still there for us.
Henderson's effort.
Oh,
so
There's five. I watched it back this morning. The highlights. On top of Henderson's effort, there's 5 quality half chances. Not like we're definitely going to score.
We only had 3 shots on target, which I found coming over in the game. I found that amazing.
But Wijnaldum has 3 good efforts in the second half, where a little bit more luck. Klein has one where he has to work the keeper in the second half. Where great move, it opens everything out. And in the first half, Firmino has a bit of a sitter on his head. There's a lot of action. It's not like there are many a blunt day we've had in the past. We struggle to think the chance we made in the game. Now I'm not saying we made like that famous Rafa game where we made 27 chances against Stoke and still ended up drawing. But in terms of our chance creation, it wasn't terrible. I just think our confidence has gone a bit there.
But I think when it comes to the Middlesbrough game, I think the fact that it's Middlesbrough and we're going to the Riverside is a thing for the fans, but it shouldn't be a thing for the players because the only player who was there when they were last in the Premier League is Lucas. And if he's shitting himself over Middlesbrough, then we've got serious problems. I think I totally agree with Rob's point that what these last 2 games, and actually you've got to say the last 4 games because we've got 5 points from 12 now. So the last 4 games, what happens now is the next few. And I think that there is no reason with the way that we can play when we're on it that we can't win all 3 of the games we've got left before 4 of the games, whatever it is, before New Year. now, and I think we can go to Middlesbrough, and I don't think we're going to see the best performance that we've ever seen from a Liverpool team, but I think you're right. We could see the steel, and we could see the determination, and we could see us, get the 3 points and just start to get back into a decent position.
I think we're being harsh on Liverpool as well because of the ambitions we've got as well. I mean, the last 2 games, I don't think any of them we performed really poorly. It's not like you've gone from being the Harlem Globetrotters, which we look like, to Everton. Do you know what I mean? It's not like we look that bad. We're making mistakes, and it's slipped into our game. If Liverpool turn up and just do what they do and eradicate these silly things we're doing, they win. And I think they win most football matches against most sides. I think we can step it up a gear as well, and I think we've got another gear that we found against Watford, Hull, Leicester and the like. But there's no reason this Liverpool side isn't mature enough to just turn up at the Riverside and beat them 5-0.
I think the thing about this season as well is these silly mistakes that have come through, they're not something that's just occurred over the last 2 games. Pretty much all season we've had these, we've conceded goals. Yeah, we've conceded silly goals. It's just that in these 2 games they've actually cost us. But it's been happening anyway, and I'm sure that hopefully it won't continue. But it's there, isn't it?
It is. It's the risk versus reward thing. I think it's really interesting in that using the Lallana foul, for the opener, for instance. Well, that's partially because Lallana's trying to win the ball back, so he wants to counter-attack. I think loads of what we do, and I think maybe the manager may decide to have a little think or look about that, but I think loads of what we do is based around this. Well, we're trying to play a certain type of football, and we're going to keep trying to play it, and that's the only thing that makes sense. To change that doesn't make any sense really. At this stage of the season, it's a bit different if you've got, say, 5 games to go possibly, but at this stage of and you're in contention, but at this stage of the season, I think it's cut loose to getting points on the board, Rob, and that's all it is. I mean, I genuinely sort of think that it's getting as many points on the board by game 28 as possible. And if in the meantime Chelsea just simply don't stop winning, then we've all just got to shrug our shoulders and cop for it. But if Chelsea, and when Chelsea do stop winning, we've got to say, well, we're going to take advantage. And I think it's sort of the forgotten art of all this is be on 60 points game 28, 62 points game 28, 10 games to go, and then you never know, you can put a run in.
Yeah, it's all questions of degree. Chelsea are going to stop winning. That's as sure as day follows night. It's not like a coin that's tossed. In fact, if anything, the more they win, eventually the burden of that run will take its toll. And I hope that echoes Neil Jones when he's been on shows with me, has this theory, and I've watched it every time, and he's spot on. If you've been on a massive long winning run and you stop winning, you then don't win the second and third game. And it's amazing often that happens. And so what I'm talking about with degree is when Chelsea's run ends, how badly will it end? That's going to affect the title race hugely. Our sequence has ended. It's how bad it is. If we bounce back now, as Adam said, as I said, we're all saying is eminently possible, and this isn't an issue. We now need to begin our next run. There's blips, and I think if we extend this into Middlesbrough and Everton, we're going to go, I think this isn't a title competing season really, unless something marvellous suddenly happens. I don't think it's going to be one of them. Let's be sensible. I think it might.
I think Ferguson said, didn't he? He said, as long as you're in position for Christmas, you'll be all right for a title run. And I think as long as these next couple of games before Christmas, we keep angling and keeping up with them, even if it's the same points total as where it is now. What is it, 6 points now? As long as it's no more than 6 points by New Year's Day, I think we'll be all right.
These two aren't bank. Middlesbrough and Everton looked back on from a few games ago. We're not bankers.
No.
Bournemouth away was a near banker and West Ham at home was a banker. We simply have to pay those back now. Yeah. That's the way I always look at it. You've got to go and win at Middlesbrough and Everton, I think.
I think it'd be interesting to see if they have to deal with injuries like we've had to deal with injuries. How well will these other teams deal with that? Because we've had a stinker when it comes to injuries, really. And
last month,
key injuries. I'm not sure whether Chelsea have got the depth to be able to deal with the key injuries that we've had to deal with.
They scrape home yesterday a little bit, Chelsea. Take Hazard out of that. Hazard out of that team.
I think you're spot on, and I was just about to say, I know it's quite trite to sort of talk about luck, but there were sort of 2 mistakes, if you like, in both games. The mistake in the Chelsea game was made by a West Brom defender. The mistake in our game was made by our goalkeeper, defender, whatever you want to say. If you flip them, they've dropped 3 points and we've won 3 points. You know what I mean? Like it is that tight. And I do think, we're not going to talk about it, but the goal, if the referee does his job, we're 2 all going into half time and we're probably going to win the match. Those little things do turn seasons and can turn seasons for any team.
Chelsea should have been beaten the week before at City. It's that simple.
I'm very pleased that Adam thinks that we just needed the extra 2 minutes in order to get the result against in the end there against West Ham United. But it's the right attitude. You can always get more minutes, always get more opportunities. opportunities. The manager's come out fighting today in his press conference, and fair play to him for that. He will back his footballers. He just asks that we do the same, and I think we can do that as well. We can also talk honestly about them, and I hope you've enjoyed us doing so. Thank you very much, Adam Smith, Rob Gutmann, Paul Senior and Paul Hogan. Alex Garrow's produced this bit. I'm producing the bit that follows, and that's this is Peter Marshall right now talking about his documentary that's airing tonight on ITV after news at 10. Here he is. Really pleased to be joined now by Peter Marshall. Hillsborough documentary coming out after the news at 10 tonight on ITV. There's been stuff coming about it all weekend. As you've seen, for instance, David Conn about it. It's called Hillsborough Smears, Survivors and the Search for Truth. It's 20 to 11 tonight in the UK. I'm saying this on Monday. It'll be available on ITV Player after the fact if you're in the UK, if you miss it. And it'll be available out at some point worldwide. Peter said that they are going to sell it to a worldwide audience, so it should be available for people there. But, Peter, it's something that you've been working on now for, well, in many senses, as you'd say yourself, for since 1989, but it's very much now been the last 3 years has been pretty intense working on this.
Yeah, because I've been speaking to survivors from the Leppings Lane Terrace in the past 3 years, and they've done an awful lot of work and checked out stuff themselves with the 500,000 Hillsborough documents. They've made connections and joined the dots. And we've been making the programme itself for the past 6 months. So, yes, it's good to get it done.
You mentioned there that there are these sort of organisations of survivors who have been working so hard to comb over this material that's come out as part of the HIP report. I mean, the HIP report was the report itself, but there were that enormous dump of documents, which were, many of which were almost more interesting than the report in a few senses once you delve down into them, because they create this web of text, don't they, really, which tells you so much of that. Both tells you what it's trying to conceal, but also tells you what it is what people were trying to conceal, but also what was unspoken at the time, what was hidden at the time. I mean, those documents, I've spent some time just sort of combing through them, and in many senses you can sort of get lost in them for a while, so that there's these teams of people working together is very important.
It is, and you need people with a really good brain for that sort of thing, which is pretty rare. And there's one particular individual who is known by his online moniker. He doesn't want his real name to be revealed. Yeah. His online moniker is Tenacious Kennedy, or also the Wrong Kennedy. It's the same chap. And he's brilliant, and he's found out stuff which we've now had our own people investigating, and myself and colleagues have looked at it. And we found out that the deductions he's made have actually been found to be true, and we've borne them out and checked them out and got them legally sound, and that's what's on TV tonight, and it is pretty disturbing stuff.
It's stuff that hasn't come out before, and I think that's the. I mean, this is the key thing here. I mean, for instance, it was released over the weekend about Sir Dave Richards' evidence, which hopefully will be investigated by Operation Resolve. But that's come out over the weekend. But there's much more, isn't there? That's going to be within this documentary about, and it is very much focusing not on simply the events of the 15th of April, but on the weeks and months that passed.
Yeah, we're looking at an alleged police cover-up with serious allegations about an alleged police cover-up involving not just South Yorkshire Police, who were responsible for policing Hillsborough, but West Midlands Police, who were supposed to be investigating South Yorkshire in the months that followed. And there are serious questions about them, about the way they treat witnesses, and about the way that they took in certain evidence which we found to be questionable.
And this is... you've mentioned there that the person that you mentioned before who doesn't want the name to be given up is, this is sort of ongoing as well with reference to Operation Resolve and with the IPCC, isn't it, as well? Peter, the sort of documentary work that you're doing here, and especially the work that's being done with these documents, it is all feeding into the wider investigations that remain ongoing, but hopefully will report either probably not now towards the end of this year, but certainly hopefully by spring, sort of summer next year.
Yeah, I mean the IPCC and Operation Resolve, the two criminal investigations, are supposed to send their files to the Crown Prosecution Service by January or in January, and the Crown Prosecution Service said it'll take them 3 to 6 months to decide who or if there are to be prosecutions, and that's what people are waiting for, because people want prosecutions. I mean, the evidence we found is it shocked me, and you think you can't be shocked by some Hillsborough stuff, but it is pretty shocking.
I know you can't give too much away, both now and also because the show is airing, but it is. It now feels sort of like almost the defining event of that entire decade, Peter, and the longer that people are dwelling on it, it sort of feels as though it's the thing that punctuates so many attitudes that permeated so many cultures that went badly wrong across the course of the decade, that it's become this sort of, it's almost become where lots and lots of different ley lines meet. And I think that, for instance, there's the Orgreave stuff, which, is conveniently overlooked by people so very often. And all of this now it feels as though it's ramping up into just at some point when this evidence does go to the CPS, and then hopefully, the IPCC said that they will publish everything. When everything is published, and it'll be another web of documents, it's almost endless in many senses, and that's both a bad thing because people are still caught up in it all, but it's a good thing in that more and more is just coming to light.
Yeah, I think survivors want it all sorted out, and they want to exercise the whole thing, as do I think most of the bereaved. They don't want to dwell on it, but they want the truth, and the truth is still not revealed really. There's extraordinary things. I'm happy to tell you about what's in the program. Basically, there's ridiculous stuff like the match referee Ray Lewis, the man who had to stop the match. His statement was changed. He told police that, on the way to the ground, he was asked how was sports. He said he saw them, and there were Liverpool and Forest fans together, and they were mixing happily. They were mixed, and all fine. And his statement was taken down by a West Midlands chief superintendent, who wrote that down as in handwriting as mixed. But then when he sees 25 years later, when Ray Lewis sees his statement at the FA, where it's been deposited in advance of the inquest, mixed has become pissed. So he's now saying the fans were pissed. Now, that's just absurd. And we've seen the handwriting, and there's no way it can be confused. So, he thinks that it was there to put in that way to stand up a police theory at the time. And he's very angry about it. Now, the chief superintendent who took this statement, we've got footage of him 4 years after Hillsborough, briefing Aston Villa and Birmingham City, briefing police in West Midlands before a Villa, I think it's Birmingham, derby game, and saying, be careful today, because remember Hillsborough, the fans arrived late and drunk. And he says this is 4 years after Hillsborough. 5 years on, in 1999, this chief superintendent is jailed for 18 months for a massive £90,000 fraud. He's called Chief Superintendent Barry Mason, and he died at the start of this year.
It is sort of, I'm just shocked by the brazenness of that, but it tells you so much about the culture at the time, Peter, that it goes unchallenged, that it can be got away with, and that it's not just simply the events, as you say, even on the day, that's West Midlands Police.
Yeah, well, it's pretty shattering when you hear that. Ray Lewis, the referee, couldn't believe it, but he's a great guy, and he says, well, when he saw the statement, they were pissed. He hadn't said that. He said, that puts me in a bad light with all sorts of people. First of all, he wouldn't use that language, he says, but he certainly didn't believe that. He thought Liverpool fans, the Forest fans, everybody was all well behaved.
When we talk about what's going to happen, you mentioned that the documents are going to the CPS in January. You mentioned that people want to see things, want to see charges handed down and stuff getting chased along. I think we've got to be careful in general, Peter. I always try to sort of emphasise this. I know you do as well. That we, both the survivors and the bereaved. It's a lot of different people who think different things,
yes.
And I think that's it's an important thing to always dwell on. That you can't talk about it. Even the 96 families, you can't talk about them as a homogenous mass. Everyone thinks different things, and that's an important thing. But it is important, isn't it, now that we just get to the end of this process? That it would be fantastic if, say, come by 2018, people were able to feel as though even those who want to see it go all the way, absolutely, until right the way through, until the whole thing, until there's charges handed down, until there's possibly even prison sentences, and we've got to be careful what we say around that. But that that it's so important now that this just gets finished. The HIP report was very, very important. The inquest's unbelievably important. But getting to the end of this now for as many people as possible has got to be the focus.
I think so, yeah. People want to be sure that the process has been exhausted, they've had proper justice, and they've got a just result. I think that's what everybody would want, yeah.
Do you find when you do these sorts of shows, just to sort of sum it up, these documentaries that you do, these reports, do you find it harder and harder, or concerningly is it's sort of becoming easier and easier in a few senses to put over to people what the late 1980s were like, because we work in our office with some young men, and they often have some questions as to sort of how this could have happened, and contextualising that I always find is one of the toughest things. So when you're looking to go through these sorts of smears, I mean we'd like to think we're a long way removed. In many senses we might not be. I mean there's lots of talk of fake news and things at the minute, but it is something which it's difficult to put over, isn't it? What Britain was like in 1989 for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly think, things have changed that radically, really. I mean, it's always the same. We were like that then, we're not like that now. But any organisation, seeks to change itself and to improve itself, but there are always flaws. And I think that, people who are in trouble do try to cover up their guilt, and that will always happen. That's why any organisation needs to be monitored, needs to be answerable for its doings. Okay,
it's Hillsborough Smears, Survivors and the Search for Truth, ITV, at 20 to 11 this evening, 10:40 after news at 10. Hillsborough Smears and Survivors, the Search for Truth. Thank you very much to Peter and for everyone else who's come on the Anfield Wrap this week.